The Monte and the Pharaoh Show is brought to you by...
Because wine is your second favorite four-letter word. California wine, New York attitude. Good fucking wine.
Yeah.
The NWA heavyweight champion, and at the time you had to be able to go 60 as a babyface or a heel as a champion. And this guy had been around, and he was polite with everybody, but I wasn't intimidated. I didn't think I was good enough to even talk to him. But when that'd be like you're breaking in baseball and you're playing baseball with Babe Ruth, and you don't want to talk to Babe Ruth because you don't feel you're worthy of him. And that's the way I felt, was because I knew I was the shits, and I never thought I would stay in the business as long as I did here, of just talking shit and doing whatever.
Drew Wilson knows how to keep us on live here. Hey Rip, how you liking this 80-degree weather? It's $10 super chat.
This is the greatest weather we've had here today.
Opinions on Monte and the Pharaoh.
Oh yeah, I watch them on the internet a lot of times. They're really good. I like them. They have some great guests on there. I like their opinions. As a matter of fact, they're over with me. I watch them as much as I can, just as much as I watch Jimmy Cornette stuff, and that's probably the main two that I like. But then again, I like James. I like to watch James's stuff, and then God, I see the guy. I've been on his show, but I can't. The dark-haired guy, this and that. But anyway,
I've never heard of Monte and the Pharaoh.
Yeah, they're good. You can Google.
They wrestling?
Yeah, it's all about wrestling stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Grandma, because, you know, most of the stuff you see about your family in the news, most of the talk is about Fritz.
Yeah.
Tell us about Grandma. What was Grandma like?
Mimi. Mimi was a Southern lady. She said Pilla, and she's from Mississippi. She was really like a lady, like a little debutante. She was very big on us having manners, and you know, we were finally the girls that she wanted after having 6 boys. And she loved, you know, taking us out on the 4-wheelers and pointing out all the beautiful flowers. And she was a painter, as you probably know now because of the movie. That part, she actually painted in the movie. She painted beautiful things. And I don't know, she had a big in the Edom house, you know, the big 9,000 square foot home they had on the ranch. Downstairs, she had her own basement that had one of those ovens where you could fire your own ceramics. So she made like dolls and all kinds of things. And yeah, she was really loving. She was funny. She was witty. She was complicated. You know, she'd been through a lot with, you know, losing all of her sons. So yeah, I mean, as I grew older, I kind of had questions like why we weren't closer or why she didn't reach out to me as much. She moved to Hawaii. I had some trouble with that, but I think she'd just been through so much in her life that she just, you know, I don't know if she disconnected or what, but yeah.
With the Iron Claw though, right? They made Fritz look like this taskmaster, but I also felt like they made your grandmother look like a very cold and calloused woman. Was that another misrepresentation of her or of that family?
Yes, it was. Yeah, she wasn't like that. She was just really great with conversation. She liked to have conversations, actually. She was very open about how she felt about things too. And she was, like I said, she was really witty. She's so funny. There's this Atkinson gene that Mimi had. Mimi must have passed on to Daddy and Uncle Kevin and Kristen and Lacey and my cousin Jill. They all have this, and Marshall. They all have this hilarious, witty gene. I think Ross has it too. I didn't get it. And it came from Mimi, and just loves to laugh and just, you know, they just think of the funniest things. And like I said, I didn't get it unless I've been drinking a lot of alcohol, and then it kind of comes out, but I need help. But yeah, that's how she was. So in the movie, yeah, cold and disconnected. So I wouldn't say that, but I think I know she had some darker sides because of what she had been through, but I didn't see that. And she was always willing to talk and be there for us. So.
Hollie, if I can ask you, and I know it's obviously sensitive stuff, but your Uncle Kevin's been asked if he blamed your grandfather, Fritz, for the passing of the boys and the horrible tragedies that just seemed to plague the family. Do you feel that your grandmother may have felt that way, that it was Fritz's fault? I mean, he was portrayed as a taskmaster.
Well, I don't think that Mimi blamed Granddad. I don't think she did. From what I've heard, I don't think that she did. I think there's probably some situations, where it was just like with any, parenting relationship you have with the husband and wife, you always think like, okay, you could have done that better. Or you could have, for example, Uncle David going to Japan. Should he have gone being that sick? Probably not, but did Granddad push him? Yeah, he did. So, Mimi probably blamed Granddad a little bit for allowing that. I don't know. Maybe she blamed herself too for not stopping it. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Granddad was hard on him. I know that. But he wasn't a villain. He loved him so much. He just expected them to be as great as they were, just, yeah. It's hard to know what mental battles people are, feeling or facing. You push them too hard.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but like you talk about in sports, like let's just call McEnroe's father, we'll just use John McEnroe, grab a great athlete out of the air. His father drove him too and drove him to be a millionaire. And, these guys, these children, they were kids. I don't know if children's the right word, but they eventually became millionaires, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you.
And so, exactly. No, I was just to your point. Yes, if they were all living and succeeding, then it would be because of Granddad and his push towards greatness. But yeah, we always talk about everyone wants someone to blame, and it is easy to blame Granddad. And I think my sister might a little bit just off the stories that she's heard. And then whenever I think of Granddad not answering the call when Uncle Kevin was warning him about Daddy, like, of course, that really hurts. But I don't want to blame Granddad. And so I just don't let my mind go there. Daddy had made up his mind about what he was going to do. And, if Granddad or Uncle Kevin would have stopped him in that moment, there might have been, just another time that he would have decided to do what he did, because he was hurting and he was ill.
So can you go further into that? Because in the documentary, you tell a story I guess you never had told before, that you were sitting at a restaurant as a young woman or a young girl, and he says, I'm going to take my own life. And he kind of puts that on you, which I thought was really rough. I was like, and I agree, there must be something wrong when an adult like that throws that on their daughter. First of all, how difficult is that to be able to handle? And what was your father's illness? Was it just mental illness from drugs, or just mental illness in general?
Well, I think it was mental illness in general, brought on by like probably some post-traumatic stress and things that he had been through, So if you think about being in a family with two parents who lost a child that young with Uncle Jackie, there's that heaviness over your family already. And then Daddy and they all lost Uncle Dave. And then they lost Uncle Mike. And then they lost Uncle Chris. I mean, he was already battling so much from that. And then, the foot, feeling like a cripple and a fraud. He's not being his true self. And he's got this drug addiction. And then he's got this beautiful wife that he loves so much that just like can't, isn't going to just stand by and be abused physically and mentally, and you're just about to lose everything. That he just had a lot. I mean, it's a lot going on, and he had depression, and we know that there's some genetic components to mental illness, especially like depression and bipolar and things like that. So I think it's all of the above, and the drugs just were, it's part of why he probably had an affinity towards using drugs, I guess. But woo.
Now, welcome to New York, Adam, my man cave.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. So yeah, all of the above. But yeah, so I do. I think about my dad and the relationship that we had, and the fact that he wanted to tell me something like that, and that just proves like how much he was hurting and how very, very lonely he was, and how he probably needed someone he trusted and deeply loved, and that loved him that deeply. I don't know, he just needed to get it out and tell somebody. I don't know. Or, sometimes I've thought like maybe he just wanted to give, I don't know, not like a warning, but like, I don't know, but to ease the pain when it did happen. I have no idea. I can't even imagine. Honestly, I have a 6-year-old and we're so close, and he speaks to me like he's an adult. And so I could see where I could confide in him, if I had no one else. But yeah, it hurts to think back on that story and that time. But,
so let me ask you this. Let me ask you this then. This gets laid on you at such a young age, and then eventually he does take his life, right? What kind of mental stress and damage did that put on you as the person? And Jimmy, I'm afraid to ask this question because last time I asked a question like this, I got screamed at by a guest, so I don't want to get screamed at by Holly. But on a serious note, like, how did that affect you?
Well, I was 8. And Holly, I think maybe a part of me,
mad at your
can you hear me?
And you're angry with him.
I think in the moment I was angry and scared. In the moment I was angry and scared. And I think I've just never been mad at my dad for what he did. I mean, I hate to, maybe I just hate to say that I am mad at my dad because I don't want to be mad at him. But there is probably there's a part of me that hates what he did, and that he left us, and that I've got these 2 amazing kids, son that looks a lot like him. Reminds me of him so much. I hate, so, but I think that maybe a part of me as a little kid just thought, it's not real. Kind of like when he died, I was in denial for a very long time about that he actually died. I would have dreams that he was still living and he was just hiding somewhere because I knew that he was in trouble with the law and stuff. So, I would I would have hope that he was just hiding out somewhere and hadn't actually died. Even though I was at his funeral and the wake and stuff. But I think now as an adult, it hits me a little more because I have kids that age, and it makes me just hurt for him even more because I would never do that to my kids. I can't even imagine how much he had to have been hurting, to tell me something like that. But yeah,